And I'm believing next week, there's many of you out there that's going to bring somebody with you. And I believe people, we talked to millennial earlier, I believe there's going to be people, especially millennials, that are going to start piling into these meetings that we have every Monday night. And they're going to say, hey, I'm glad I'm with people that can just be real. That's just like me that messes up. So go to lastevangelist.com. Sign the newsletter. Yeah, if you want to, you can donate and have a shirt or a hat. You can go to davidheavener.tv, and we broadcast on that. You're going to see shows that you won't see on the YouTube channel. Go there and sign up. It's just like Netflix, but we don't have all the garbage on there. Okay, so now we're coming into a topic and this is something that's just really bothered me for a long time. And I have to tell you, I've been guilty of it. Not extremely, but what really set me off was when I started seeing this OMG stuff. People texting OMG, people emailing OMG. Oh my, and I even hate to say it, but God, I'm praying now that it's okay to say the things we're going to, because we're saying them to bring it out into the open, to nail Satan, because what he's doing to your character and how people are disrespecting you. So I pray that the things I say and the things we say, it's okay to say. But oh my God, how many times have I been talking to a Christian and all of a sudden they come up with, oh my God. I turned on a major Christian network 2 weeks ago, saw a well-known pastor. You're not going to believe this, but I'm telling you the truth. Say over the air, oh my God. Now, you go, well, okay, oh my God, that's not taking God's name in vain. Well, we're going to talk about that. What is taking God's name in vain? You mean you have to say GD? Is that what you're telling me? That you put the D word in back of God, and that all of a sudden puts it in a category that God says, oh, no, I can't accept that. Am I being heard out there, Jared? Are you with me? Okay, you can hear me okay, right? Okay, because I mean, this causes me to lose my mind. And it's hard to contain myself. It may take me another 5 minutes before I bring my next guest on, but I just have to tell you how important this is. Folks, listen, I got my own problem. My own problem is I say, oh, Lord, sometimes. Yeah, that's and I should not say that, and I'm repenting of that. And since God has dealt with me, I've really curbed that. I can't tell you every time I've made it. And I don't want to hear any more country songs singing, oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any more country songs. And don't think, country singer, if you're listening to me because you say, oh, Lord, in a song, you're exempt. You're not. And you're put on notice right now. I don't want to hear people talking about, oh, that rap music. They talk about that. Let me tell you about it. Country music. I hear so much God and Lord and garbage in that as I do any kind of music. So I don't want to hear about it. Okay, my next guest, I'm sorry, is Miss Holly. So I'm teaching an acting class. Okay, I teach acting and filmmaking. And she happened to be one of my students. And she's doing a scene with another actor, with a guy, and a good guy. He's a nice guy, but not a believer, has no consciousness of God. And I can attest to that. And he would attest to that. And Holly is a Christian. And she's doing this scene, and it happens to be a scene that is called improvisation, which means you can kind of make up your own dialogue. And she's doing this scene, and the fellow actor is saying GD, taking God's name in vain. Now, I got to tell you, and this was some years back. This was before I was awake. I was a Christian, but I was asleep. Okay. So this was some years back. But I tolerated this stuff. In other words, I'm sitting in a class and there's somebody sitting there and they're taking God's name in vain. And he's with Holly. And Holly stops in the middle of the scene. And she looks at me. She says, "Excuse me." She said, "If nobody's going to speak up, I will." And then she did something that was earth-shattering. And I felt so convicted. She looked at him and she said, called him by name. She was nice about it. "Would you please stop using God's name in vain?" I'm like, whoa, okay. You know, have you ever had one of those moments where somebody just kind of catches you off guard and they do something? Even me. I mean, I have to tell you, it's like when that can happen to me, and it can happen to anybody. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh man. And she said, "David," she turned to me, she says, "David," she goes, "I know this is your class." She goes, I can't allow myself to be around this. I can't be with somebody that's doing this." Now, he wasn't doing it to hurt her or to hurt me or to hurt anybody. That was just the way he talked, right? I still think it was inappropriate. And by the way, using God's name in vain anywhere, whether you're a Christian or not, is inappropriate. It's just inappropriate. It means that you're not smart enough to know what you're talking about, so you got to throw another word in there to make up for what it is you're trying to get across. Okay. But what this did, and this is why I wanted to bring her on, and I hope she will come on. I think we're having some technical difficulty, but is because she stood up. She stood up into the winds of hell, a gal, a girl, single by herself, in a class with other people, and she was honest. And she spoke. Holly, are you there?
I'm here. Hello. The devil tried to keep me off. Boy, did.
Well, that's what happens when you stand up to people that want to use God's name in vain, because Satan loves it when people uses God's name in vain. Don't you agree?
Yes, he does. He
Okay.
dances.
Okay, so you're with me now. I told the story about you in class. You were working with another actor. He kept using God's name in vain. You were doing an improv. Holly, how did that make you feel every time he would speak the word GD? How would that make you feel?
It hurt me. It made my stomach twist. It hurt my heart for the Lord because you don't hear people. I've never heard someone that worships Buddha say Buddha's name in vain. I've never heard anyone say Allah's name in vain. So why do they take my God's name in vain over and over and over? And it was just, I couldn't stand it.
Okay, but you knew that when you stopped it, you could have offended some people, and I mean, if there would have been producers in my class, which sometimes I do when I do big classes, you could have ruined your chance for getting a job as an actress. You knew that, right?
I don't want to grieve the Holy Spirit. So that is the most important thing to me. The jobs, it's all in God's plan. If me speaking up for the Lord cost a job, then that's fine with me. God will
Wow.
bless me down the
Yeah.
road.
God bless you. Well, you know, I have a lot of our California friends out there in Hollywood, which is where you are, that listen to this show, and I think they're really going to be touched by this, and I think they'll agree with you. And there are some that may be listening that aren't even aware, Holly. So let's get into taking God's name in vain. Uh, when someone says, "Oh my God," is that taking God's name in vain, or do you have to say the D word after God?
No, I don't say, "Oh my God," any longer. I used to,
Yeah.
but I realized it is using God's name in a way that we really should not be using it. So I say, "Oh my gosh."
Okay. And I want to talk about that too. I do want to talk about that. Let's go to Let's go to Exodus 27, Jared. Exodus 27, King James Version. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. In other words, you're not going to get off on this one. You'll be found guilty when you take God's name in vain. Oh, but wait a minute, hold it. I'm saved under grace. Oh, but hang on, God knows my heart. He knows I'm really not offended. Really? Let me tell you something. My earthly father, who's not with us anymore, if you went around and you started saying, oh, my Leonard, oh, my Leonard, oh, my, I'd probably punch you in the nose because that would offend me. I'd go, why are you throwing my father's name around? Why don't you call him Mr. Heavener? How much more should we be offended by our Heavenly Father when people use his name other than it being, folks, we should be to the point where we're even so humble and so convicted that we're afraid to speak the name of God, that we're not worthy. Oh my God, are you kidding me? Do not take my name in vain, God says. So what does that mean to take God's name in vain? Anytime that you're doing something in vain, it means that it's useless, that there's no importance to it. So when you mention God, you're saying there's no importance to God. Oh, really? So when someone says, oh my God, or they say GD, as this gentleman did that was in class, who I don't believe was a Christian, but he was a friend of mine, a friend of yours.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know our God. When
Right.
people say GD, or they say, oh my God, they don't know our God. Could they be talking about some other God? In other words, they don't know our God. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense, but they know.
Okay.
They are not in a relationship with him, but they know him.
They know.
Does that make sense?
Good point. I
Yeah.
think Romans says that we all have a consciousness of God in our heart. Is Mike Spalding still with us, Pastor Spalding? I have a question for you. He may take him a minute to unmute, but I've wondered this, Holly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Mike, let me know when you're on.
I'm here.
Oh, okay, brother. So I'm going to ask you this. We've been talking about taking God's name in vain. I have Miss Holly on the line, and Holly, Mike is a pastor. What? Someone doesn't know God, but they're saying, "Oh my God." Are they talking about our God? And if they're not, should it even bother us? What should we do about that?
Well, I think they are talking about Yahweh, Jehovah, our God.
Okay.
They're using the same name that Christians use. They're certainly not talking about some other unknown God. And I would look at it as an opportunity to engage them in conversation, David, and just ask them, by the way, are you a born again believer? And if they say no, then you use a follow-up question. Well, I was
Yeah.
just wondering because you were calling out to my God, and I was wondering if you knew him personally. But since you don't, can I tell you about him?
Okay. Okay. Now, what about using the word Lord? Because I came down on the country singers a while ago, the country music, which I wrote for years, and I wrote a lot of songs with Lord in it. When someone says, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz?" "Oh Lord," is that taking God's name in vain? And we say, "Oh Lord."
Well, that's skirting right on the periphery. If it isn't, that's it. The point is we've got thousands of words to use without using
Okay.
the Lord's name or the Father's name flippantly or carelessly. That's what it boils
Okay.
down to.
All
When
right.
to say we're taking God's name in vain is to do so in any other way that isn't with
Uh,
reverence and respect.
okay. All right. And Holly said something that I've asked myself too, and I hope I asked this question only because guys, Holly and Mike and everyone listening, I'm running the risk of looking like an idiot and maybe offending people. I don't know, but I really want this platform, this show, to be real, and I want to talk about things that people don't talk about. So Holly said, now I say, oh my gosh. And I've said, oh my gosh. And I think if I say, oh my gosh, that's okay with God. Now I know, Mike, you're not right now sitting on the throne with, heaven. But in your opinion, is it okay to say, oh my gosh? I mean, how do you think God would look at that?
I try to avoid even using euphemisms or words that sound the same but might be different. I try to avoid the whole. There's a very popular word that people use today to replace. Let me say it this way: to replace the F bomb, as it's
Yeah,
referred to.
right.
I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think we should be using that word as a believer, because as soon as you use it, David and Holly, everybody knows what word you substituted for.
Oh man, you just said that. When people do that, and I very seldom abuse this word simply because it rhymes with chicken, and I don't like to eat chicken. But frickin'. It's like when someone says the frickin', I'm going, hey, you know what? Why don't you just come out and say the words so I can smack you, right? Because I got my kids with me. But they're saying frickin', and I know what you're saying, Mike.
Yep.
That's offensive, because what it is they're really trying or wanting to say. They just don't say it, right?
Right.
Good point. So Holly, and by the way, Mike, Holly's an actress in Hollywood, and she stood up to a guy who took God's name in vain, and it pretty much shocked me in the acting class many years ago. So,
David, I remember you sharing that story when you were with us one time, and I've actually shared that story again too, Holly. I've used that. Didn't know your name, but have used it as an example of somebody that had some courage to stand up for their convictions and defend the Lord.
Oh, yeah. What do you think non-Christians think of when people call themselves Christians, but we as Christians use God's name in vain when we say OMG or oh my God?
Yeah, I think that unbelievers, if they know your testimony and they know that you're a Christian, they think, well, you must not think too highly of your
Of
faith or the God that you say you have faith in if you're not going to say something.
I want to read a scripture that really touched my heart on this whole thing. You say to yourself, but David, what if I just type out OMG? I'm not saying it. Would you stop that nonsense? Stop that compromise. You are the remnant of the remnant. God is calling a people to be pure and holy, not religious. Real. Matthew 12, 36, 37. Matthew 12, 36, 37. But I say unto you, to you and to me, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. As we close this out, I want to share this with you. That because we are the remnant waking up the remnant, we are justified. Therefore, the words that come out of our mouth are to be nothing but justified. Because our job is to wake up the remnant. And we know that many are called, few are chosen. And there's going to be many more that's going to be speaking words that will condemn them than words that'll justify them. But you're not one of them, and neither am I. You're justified. Let's act like it. When we come back after this break, We're going to be talking about a subject that breaks my heart. And I mean, it breaks my heart. We're going to be talking about the after school. We're going to be talking about the after school Satan's Club when we come back. Hey everybody, welcome to David Heavener TV, 7 channels of truth. And what are the 7 channels of truth? Well, in today's world where there's so much chaos and so much turmoil, and it seems the church has dropped the ball, we pick up on it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for signing up, and God bless you.